Today on the Ben and Tony podcast, we had two guests, Ali Sprague and Michael Weiss, who are a high-performing couple. Ali is an advisor and consultant helping early-stage companies and is also the founder and facilitator of Sexploration, a discussion series for women to explore challenges and opportunities around sex and relationships. Michael is the founder of AI4, one of the world's leading AI communities and conferences, and it's a fascinating experience to interview a couple, and what a unique couple. From Michael's incredibly ambitious dreams to create the next World's Fair, to Ali's groundbreaking work in sex and relationships, our discussion covered all different types of topics you would never hear normally. The entire conversation was grounded in both Michael and Ali's commitments to make the most out of life, embrace their true desires, and listen to their heart. We learn a lot from this one.
This was a super fun episode. Watching Michael and Ali bounce off one another as they spoke through their life and career transitions together was awesome. And frankly, Michael has got me 100% sold on building the next World Fair too. He may have put his aspiration aside for now, but I'm set on convincing him that we should do it together over the next 5 years. So watch this space.
And we're very, very excited to be sponsored by the Making Lemonade Fund, Gen Z's fastest growing fundraiser, supporting COVID-19 relief, pediatric cancer, and a bunch of other great causes. Get behind them over at makinglemonadefund.com and sponsor Made by our very own Jesse K. Well, welcome guys. We've got a very interesting episode today where we're joined by not one but two guests, a married couple, Michael and Ali. So to quickly introduce Michael, you run the leading AI conference in the US called AI4. And prior to that, you tried your darndest to organize a 6-month, 100 million person World's Fair. Really looking forward to getting into what that was about. You believe that aging is a disease that will be solved, and you have been wearing Crocs since 2004. I hope you've got them on for the episode today. And
we wore them.
Amazing. And Ali, you're a master facilitator, organizing discussion series for women around sexual fulfillment, particularly when they're in relationships. Your superheroes are Freud with some nuance, as well as Little Dicky. Your favorite hobby is helping others to understand themselves better introspectively. So welcome, guys, to the Ben and Tony podcast.
Good to be here. Thanks for having us.
It's no, not at all. I mean, it's really exciting for us. This is the first time we've tried this format, so we're going to run with it. So, Michael, maybe we could, jump into the time when you left your former company, BizNow, to pursue this World's Fair, 100 million person 6-month event. What was all that about?
Al and I went to the same college, WashU in St. Louis, and then I, in 2012, graduated and joined a company called BizNow Media, which is this commercial real estate industry media and events business. And while I was there, I became very interested in the idea of a World's Fair after reading this book called The Devil in the White City, which is it's a historical fiction by this guy named Eric Larson about the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. And anyway, I spent, about 3 years at BizNow, and during most of that time, I just became very interested and knowledgeable about World's Fairs. And I'm definitely, a World's Fair amateur historian. I feel confident in saying that. And anyway, I learned that World's Fairs weren't happening anymore in the US. They still do happen in the present day internationally, known as World Expos. But the US, for some silly political reasons, basically ditched them in early 2000. And yeah, I really fell in love with just the kind of inspirational power of letting people, step through a door into a better version of tomorrow, and how that type of experience can, lead someone down an entire path of a life towards attempting to realize whatever small bit that, of a future that they fell in love with at the fair. And so I started a company, called World's Fair USA.
And Michael, just before we get into that, if for someone who's listening who has no idea what a World's Fair is, what would you summarize it as?
I mean, if you don't know what a World's Fair is, no. So
I didn't know.
it's a big event. It's a 6-month event. The first World's Fair ever took place in 1851 in London. They built this famous structure called the Crystal Palace, which was this massive glass structure. Other famous World's Fairs like 1889 in Paris, which the Eiffel Tower was built for a World's Fair. It was built as the entryway into the fair for the 1889 fair. 1893, the Chicago World's Fair, 6-month event. The Ferris wheel was invented for that fair by a guy named George Washington Gale Ferris Jr. He literally invented the Ferris wheel as a proposal to be like the main monument of that fair. Anyway, I could go on for quite a while, but these big events, they're all about the future and, international collaboration, instead of like, little rides or food booths. Like the main attraction are typically like country booths. And so countries come and build these essentially buildings, to showcase whatever, part of the future they're jacked up about.
Yeah, I went to, I think it was Milan, for like an expo. Yeah, I went a few years ago, and it's so awesome. I just love the idea of world expos, world fairs. I'd love to go to all of them in the future. But did it all come from that book, Devil in the White City? Because it shifted, if that's the case, that one book shifted a pretty big priority in your life because you dedicated like a lot of your time to building one. Was it just from that book, that serendipitous moment where you discovered it? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, I read that book. Yeah, I thought it was really cool. And then I started learning more about them. And, I've since kind of like connected my interest in World's Fairs to my current interest in longevity. Yeah, I read a fucking good book.
And then what happened next at that point? So you were so inspired by this good book that you literally decided to quit your job. I mean, I feel like there's a few more steps that might be missed.
The timeline of events was not quite as rapid. I mean,
it felt rapid. I don't know.
Actually, maybe Ali, maybe it's time to love to get your feedback. Like, how is he saying? Is he telling the truth? Tell us if he's lying.
So, I mean, we had recently started dating at this point, so I didn't have like full intel into his brain, but from my perspective, we met at a Starbucks, and he literally was like, "I quit my job today. I'm starting a World's Fair," and I was like, what's a World's Fair? Did you think this through? So yeah, I guess I wasn't super privy to how long you were really like ruminating on the idea.
Totally. Yeah. For you, it was immediate. Yeah. Cause we started dating and 3 months later I did that. So I definitely get where you're coming from. But yeah, my internal timeline was relatively slow. I mean, I read that book probably early 2013. And then, like 2 years later, I was learning a lot about World's Fairs and seeing like, a potential opening. I went for it.
I feel like one of the unique things and one of the traits I admire about Michael is like most people, it seems, would start doing this like halfway on the side. And then once it got built up a little bit, or they're making some money from it, or they have less risk, then they switch. Michael truly was like,
this is it. I'm going
job, day one World's Fair.
Right. And what was it about, Michael? What was it about the book that like really inspires you? Is it the idea of progression of humanity? Like what captured your imagination here?
Yeah, totally. So at the time, I probably couldn't have communicated it very clearly, to be totally honest. I just knew I was jacked up about it. But yeah, having thought about it quite a bit, humans have problems. We have problems as a species, as individuals, food problems, climate problems, fighting, war, political, social problems, spiritual problems, energy problems, existential, non-mundane. We have problems. To solve those problems, to solve any problem, I'm always of the mind that like a good team-based approach typically is a great, strategy. And World's Fairs are just epic because they literally get, 180 plus countries involved in this one event for multiple months, all around like a particular theme. So each World Fair has a specific theme, whether it's like the Milan Fair was actually a food theme. It was like, the question was effectively, how are we going to feed 10 billion people by 2050 or whatever? And then, to that event, every country or almost every country came attempting to answer that question for their people, for our world. And I just was very excited about that. And then what's also beautiful about fairs and just events in general, which I'm still in, is they provide a very discrete deadline. Because if you say, doors are opening, like doors are opening, tens of millions of people in the case of a World's Fair are coming in. And so you have to, have your best foot fucking ready to rock, which is great because, particularly with existential problems, which, we see with climate change so readily, it's so easy to drag your feet on that type of stuff. It's so easy to like not give yourself a self-imposed deadline. And World's Fairs, they, what I used to say was they create like a deadline on progress in a way, which I found very
Love
appealing.
that. Yeah. That's great. And I mean, Ali, you must have met this kind of dashing man, and he's also interested in helping the world.
I mean, my initial impression was that he was crazy for sure. But obviously in an appealing way, right?
What about now?
I don't think you're as crazy anymore, but I think maybe I've just got
About appealing.
Still appealing. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's inspiring to be around someone who just takes really big swings. So I think that's what I felt at the time.
This is a huge swing. I don't even, know how you would go about trying to galvanize around 100 million people from across the globe the moment that you close the back cover of a book. How does this work, Michael?
Again, two-year time lapse between closed cover and
It wasn't the day after.
with a lot of learning in between, but I appreciate the sentiment. Yeah, I mean, look, I had no idea what the fuck to do either. I was 24 when I left there. Yeah, I mean, one of the first things I tried doing was buying land, actually. I was like, well, I'm going to do an event. I need a venue. And so
he at like 5 a.m. one morning, he took us to Staten Island to like review a dump site there, basically.
Wow.
That's romantic.
Why Staten Island? Like, do you just try to find like? It could have been anywhere in the country, right? Like, why did you pick Staten Island?
So I didn't. There was a few sites around the country I found that I liked. Staten Island was one. There was one in Houston and one in Chicago. But like pretty much when thinking about hosting a mega event like that, World's Fair, Olympics, World Cup, you need a certain infrastructure in place, public transit, hotel rooms, airport terminals, restaurants, you need to actually handle that influx of people. So you can't do it in like any city. You need kind of like a tier 1 city, which is, maybe 20 cities in the US could handle it. And then, whatever, I found some spots I liked. Staten Island, I mean, I was in New York, so that was cool. And then New York has a great World's Fair history. 1939-40, actually 1953, the first US World's Fair happened in New York. In that fair, cool little fun fact, is when humans saw the first elevator demonstrated.
Wow.
By Otis. Yeah, Elijah Otis. Which is why when you get out of elevators, you see Otis on all the elevators. Otis or Schindler, but he was Otis. He was first. And yeah, he demonstrated, he like went down on this moving platform and everyone freaked out because they were like, oh my God, he's going to die. And anyway, so New York has a great history. And then Staten Island, I kind of really like Staten Island. It's beautiful to go there. I mean, a lot of people haven't, but like, it feels almost more like San Francisco in a way because it's like hilly and there's like more open green space and not a bunch of tall buildings. And then you can see the city, which is really cool. And then, more practically, I thought World's Fairs are sometimes used as reasons for like revitalization projects. And I thought it would be cool to use the World's Fair as a means to connect Staten Island more robustly to the other 4 boroughs by creating, either a light rail or gondola or something. Anyway, so yeah, I tried to buy land and no one gave me money to do it pretty much.
Yeah. Well, this is still a pretty inspirational big swing that you're taking, like laying brick by brick to get this huge vision off the ground. So, okay, one part was finding land. Like, what else were you trying to do? Like you said, you're trying to raise money. Like, what was the plan and how far did things go?
Yeah, so I was trying to buy land and from coming from BizNow, which was this like real estate company, I knew a bunch of real estate people. So I went to real estate people and I said, hey, I want to do this thing. And I want to buy, 500 acres, and then we're going to build it for 6 months, and then we're going to design it in such a way that it repurposes into a 100% renewable energy powered, community forevermore. And we're going to use the proceeds from the fair to make the real estate project such a great deal. And, people thought I was nuts, which, some of the ideas still make sense, but just my ability to put enough energy behind it to pull it off was, I guess, in retrospect, nuts. But anyway, so the land thing didn't work out, which was about, I probably did that for about a year trying to do that. And then my roommate at the time and friend from college, Marcus, who is still my business partner in AI4, he joined me in like April, May 2016. And then we started organizing these like mini World's Fairs called World's Fair Nano. And then the idea was to build like a grassroots movement and grow that into the 6-month thing. And we did, between August 2016 and mid 2018, we did 4 of those events, 2 in New York, 2 in SF. We convened 20,000 people through them. We got, a ton of press because people really liked the World's Fair story and all that.
Yeah.
We got some big names involved. We had like, famous people come. I met Tony Hsieh at one of my World's Fair Nanos. It's sad that he died recently. Yeah, it didn't make enough money. It didn't make enough money. Consumer events are tough, I learned. Mostly to get sponsorship. We sold a bunch of tickets, but sponsors, the audience wasn't super valuable. So then, that we couldn't grow it into what we wanted. So then we had to change.
What was the theme of your World Fair? You said they always run along a theme.
Good question. Good, astute question, Ben. And we didn't like theme them super directly. Like in general, the theme was experience the future. Like our tagline was experience the future. And the event itself, we would like in San Francisco, we rented, I think it was Pier 48. We rented Pier 70 one year and then Pier 48 the other year. And, we would rent like 100,000 square foot warehouse and we would just stuff it. We tried to just stuff it with future. So we would have like, 100 exhibitors, like virtual reality exhibitors, alternative food stuff. We built a whole rideables section with like electric skateboards and hoverboards. We had a whole sex tech section, Allie. Look at that. Maybe that started it. Maybe that's No, why not? Who knows? Anyway, so we built a sex tech section. We built like a cities, whatever. We built all these cool sections and all these cool companies come, mostly like hardware, tangible stuff that a normal consumer could play with and have fun with. And then we had a whole speaker section, that was a really cool speaker series. We had like, 20-minute TED style talks, and we would have just amazing people from like, blockchain leaders like Joseph Lubin, who runs Consensus, the Ethereum kind of, Aubrey de Grey, who's a big longevity dude, Tim King, senator, whatever. It was a very interesting series, and everyone was talking about the future of blank. So the future was the theme.
That sounds, Allie, this whole time, you've seen him go through, at least at this point, maybe you're together for like 2 years. And what was your thinking then? From day one, meeting this guy and having him tell you this crazy idea in Starbucks to seeing him actually get things off the ground. Like, where was your head at that point?
Yeah, I think this part was just really fun to watch because it had been like a year plus of like a lot of trying to make sense of the space or how to make something happen, but like nothing actually existing. And so at this point, I mean, every 6 months there was some massive event. They pulled off like huge feats. I mean, they were multi-thousand person events, right? So it was a big deal.
That's amazing. Great. Yeah. You guys had, getting senators, etc. there is no small feat, really.
Yeah, no, people dug it. We got, and like Bloomberg and Forbes and all these things would write stories about it because people loved the World's Fair concept. A lot of people know about it. The idea just is embedded in the culture. It was good. It was fun. Would you say it was 100% fun all the time?
I guess no, nothing is 100% fun all the time.
Well, this podcast is.
So true.
We'll get that plug. We're going to snip that little section right there and we're going to upload it everywhere. But the next thing you did then, you must have taken a lot of learnings of how to get an event off the ground when you moved on to the AI conference. So tell us a little bit about that.
So transition number 2, right? So transition 1 to World's Fair. Oh, there's something I didn't mention about transition 1. So transition
on.
1.
Let's go.
Go on.
So transition 1, I was 24, and I always felt that I wanted to like do something that was fun to me. But then I was always torn between like doing something that was fun and making money. It was always a very confusing idea. And like when I was leaving BizNow, there was this guy who was this like, just super rich real estate dude who I had become friendly with through my job. And he wanted me to go work for him. And he would have paid me definitely multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars to work for him. And I remember, so I was thinking between like that, which was like, just swallow the capitalist pill kind of route. And then there was like World's Fair, which was very opposite. And I remember, thinking at that time, and I went actually on a family trip to St. Lucia. And I remember being there, like just kind of torn. And I ended up deciding, to do the World's Fair because I just felt like when I look back, what do I want to have done? Do I want to say I like went for something, or do I want to say, oh, I got a good paycheck?
Yeah.
And
love that.
It was
mid-20s. I mean, that seems like an awesome decision.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, I think it was, but it's very hard. It wasn't obvious because, there's so much fucking cultural groupthink going on with like capital money, blah, 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 that to like break out of it as kind of drastically as I did.
I mean, that's really interesting. How did you guys must have obviously discussed it together as well. How do you make that decision?
We didn't. I mean, we didn't have any financial
like fully independent human.
Yeah, so we didn't discuss it. Yeah, how did I do it? I mean, I had, some money in my bank account, so I, wasn't gonna like not eat for a few months. I did, but then the next transition becomes more financially interesting in a way.
Yeah, I feel like that actually wasn't where the real financial danger was, because at that point, I think you believed you would make money relatively at some point soon, and he had money in his bank account. I think the real financial difficulty came like 2 years later or whatever.
Yeah, that was the next transition. Yeah. Anyway, all right, so that's the first transition. Goodbye.
So this next one, what happened when you're transitioning from a World's Fair to the AI conference?
So that second transition, yeah, so that one definitely was like a financially interesting transition because we ran out of money. We had this small company, this World's Fair company, a few people, and we ran out of money. And so, my co-founder and then my other co-founder, yeah, they probably would have left, had we not figured out how to start making money soon, which would have been an interesting experience. Yeah, and then around the same time, the other interesting thing. So I had fully ran out of money at that point, and so then my parents would give me some money, like a few $1,000 a month to pay my rent, and then I made a decision, which was interesting. Allie was with me there, where I felt that as long as like I accepted their financial aid, essentially, it would disable me from like thinking, properly creative about how to generate, cash through my business. And so then I stopped accepting their money. And so then I just started accruing debt. Luckily, I was able to put my rent on a credit card because we had a 21st century landlord. And so then I accrued around, 20, 25K in debt over 4 to 6 months. But that 4 to 6 month period was, inspired me to very quickly create a business that generated income, which we did. And, now I have a growing company and, we have 9 full-time employees and it's all hunky dory. But yeah, that transition was less idealistic in a sense than the first one, but it was an amazing learning experience.
I've got to say that like the way you describe that story, maybe it's only in hindsight that you can come across kind of blasé about it, but that sounds stressful and insane. So you've got this debt you're racking up. It's a 4-month period. What was going through your head? You're like furiously thinking like, what's my next step here? And how did you come to the idea of the next business?
Yeah, it was definitely an anxiety-inducing circumstance, but anxiety.
Also brave. I mean, to say no to money that's coming in easily and to take that debt on yourself, that's incredibly brave.
Yeah, there was some bravery. Yeah, but it was, whatever. I mean, it was anxiety inducing, but it really, necessity is the mother of creation, whatever the fuck. And we, after, really just fought, so we did the last World's Fair now in March 2018, lost, 100 fucking K or whatever. And we were, down for the count. And so then it was like April, May 2018. It was like, okay, what should we do now? And then probably June 2018, we started working in earnest on the next one. And we decided to focus on AI because we learned through Worlds for Nano that basically that AI, as a technology, it's the coolest, because what has built our world? What has built our society? Intelligence, human intelligence specifically. Okay, cool. What if we can make a second intelligence? What could that imply? Lots of fucking cool things, many of which we don't even know yet. But it's, it's just such a meta, high leverage technology. It was clear to us that we should focus on it. And so then we chose AI, and then we chose business because we figured businesses have more money than consumers. And two great decisions. And so then we did our first, AI event, which was like an AI for finance specific conference in Brooklyn in August 2018. And it went great. We profited like 150K or something off the bat. And we've been, running ever since.
So, and I guess that brings us to today, right? So that's what you're working on now. And I guess maybe later we could talk about your next steps for how that conference is going. But maybe this is the perfect time to then switch to the transitions of our other guest here, the wonderful Ali, because it sounds like you had, in some ways, similar paths. You've left companies to start your own, to do things, and you've moved and probably dealt with moments of transition that had stress involved. But maybe let's start with the first one. So, Ali, could you tell us about the story leading up to and the events of when you left Bloomingdale's to join Wonder?
I had interned at Bloomingdale's the junior to senior summer. And then they offered me a job. So I took it because that's what you do so that you can enjoy senior year. I spent almost 2 years there. And in the second year, I started to feel like pretty unfulfilled. And it was about the time where I think I started to realize that like I had a mind and I could choose what to do intentionally. And I didn't have to just like follow whatever path I happened to be on already. That was like a new realization for me around that time. So I started to just feel pretty unfulfilled at work. And I ended up pinning it on the fact that I was working in retail, which I was literally the person who was choosing which color of shirt we should sell in which locations, in which sizes, at which price. And the price part really got to me because I was taking a shirt that I knew cost $50 and I was marking it up to like $250. And I couldn't afford the shirt. And like the people who could afford the shirt, I didn't care about making their life better in that way at all. So I felt pretty empty. And I also I like to work. So I wanted to like work really fucking hard for something, but I wanted that thing to be like worth it. And so I started to feel that way for a while. But I really had never thought about like what I actually wanted to do. So it took me on this 6-month path of just like, how do I want to spend my time? What an overwhelming question. And so I started thinking, okay, well, I know retail and Bloomingdale's is like old and slow and bureaucratic. So maybe I'll just find a young, hip, tech version of retail. And so I kind of went down there and none of them really got me that excited. And so that's when I started doing some of my first like hardcore introspection work, like journaling, reading a lot, talking to a lot of people, and trying to figure out like what I cared about as a human. And one of the main things that came up for me was the idea of education and like helping people think, because it just felt really high leverage for anything anyone wanted to do. Like helping someone think was an important thing. And so I started looking at all these ed tech companies basically. And through a friend of a friend, I got introduced to Justin, who is the CEO of Wonder, which is an on-demand research company. So there are thousands of freelance analysts all around the world, and we have individuals and businesses who ask questions, and then the analysts do a bunch of research and deliver a report in 24 hours. So I went on a walk with Justin, and I was like sold immediately. It was a 7-person company. They had seed funding. So it was like pretty unstable and like unsure of what their future was, but it sounded way cooler than what I was doing. So yeah, I took the plunge.
Did you have doubts in your mind at that time? Because I think about a phrase that I think Michael said earlier, like swallow the capitalist pill. And maybe probably Bloomingdale's was a lot more stable. I don't know if they paid you more than Wonder, but did you have doubts, or was the feeling of maybe the lack of meaning in the Bloomingdale's job so powerful that you just said, I don't care. I just got to get out of here.
Yeah, definitely the latter. Like the doubts existed, right? My parents are also really conservative. So there was like, your equity doesn't mean anything. So like, you go more on the cash side and a lot of, yeah. So I definitely had some doubts around that. But at that point, I was so deeply unhappy waking up for work in the morning that I just didn't care.
You both, what struck me is that you both acted with so much intention. What would you say to someone who's kind of looking at a transitional period right now, thinking about what they should do next? They're kind of unfulfilled. How do you actually go about coming up with the thing that seems important to you?
Yeah. So I guess one note first is I think it's easier to sound intentional reflecting on something that happened a lot longer ago, when after the fact you've done a lot of like self-analysis, right? So I'm not sure I was quite as intentional as a 21-year-old like was getting takeout every night. I don't really know. But I guess what I would say to someone is to really focus on like the inner work. Meaning it's so easy to get caught up in external motivators, whether it's money, like status and title, what other people think you should do, your family's influence on you, what you've done in the past and what that means about what you can do going forward. But if you're looking for fulfillment, right, there are different goals you can optimize for. Money is a totally valid goal to optimize for. If you're optimizing for fulfillment, there's so much inner work that needs to be done around what you truly gain energy from. So I would say to start there. And there's a million ways to do that, and they're all really valid, whether it's like meditation, talking to a coach or a therapist, talking to your friends, journaling, reading a book about something you find interesting.
Yeah. That's super helpful for anyone listening to this, I'm sure, because I think sometimes when you talk about those external motivators, it sounds like you obviously guys had each other who were encouraging each other going through these kind of crazy times. But I mean, at the same time,
and people who didn't see that was a huge high five just went on.
High five of love, the most love-filled high five I've seen. But a question that's also maybe relevant for you, Michael, is did your colleagues, your friends, and your parents at the time, when both of you were making these decisions, was there overwhelming positivity? Was there like a mixed range of emotions saying, guys, don't do that, it's stupid? Or like what, because those things do have an impact on you. Did you have to deal with criticism or doubt, or was everybody very supportive, a mixture of those things?
People definitely thought I was a little out there. They definitely did. It didn't really bother me though, honestly. Like, and it's funny because one of my biggest like internal projects over the past decade has been what I call like the audience problem, which I call it like living my life through the eyes of others, which is something I think we all fucking do. And I definitely struggle with that, but with the World's Fair stuff and like trying to do what I really want, it didn't really bother me that much, honestly. It really didn't. But also the other kind of funny thing to like your question of the intentionality piece, it wasn't. I mean, yeah, in retrospect, it sounds like that, but you just got to find one little thing that you can hold on to like go in a direction. And the way I think about it still with my own life, honestly, is in terms of just directionality. And like
we used to have this like giant piece of art in our apartment that said "Take your best guess," which is like I think one of our still guiding principles. It's like
love that so much.
Right answer, just a guess in the direction is good enough.
Yeah, and the beauty is because as long as you take a guess, even if it is the complete 180 opposite direction, you will receive feedback and actually start to then learn that it is, and then you will slowly until you get in the direction you want to go. And so you just gotta get movement, literally in any direction. It truly doesn't matter which direction. If like you're like, oh, I'm happy, just get movement any which direction. And the way I like to get movement is just think, fuck it, because it's easy to say fuck it. At the end of the day, like if you're interested in something and you're worried about something else, give them both a fuck it, do it and ignore it. Yeah, so fuck it and then get some direction. And it doesn't matter if it's the right direction because you'll figure that out over time. You have to collect data first. So it wasn't intentional. It was just, a fuck it with a, then I started the process of calibrating my direction, which I'm still doing. I'm not,
Of course.
I'm still calibrating.
I love that. Fuck it, take your best guess, guys. I actually love that. I might even order that out of my own room. Maybe I
get
and I will
tattoos. Saying fuck it. Okay, so Ali, I mean, how about you? Like when you decided to join Wonder, was there external factors, opinions that had an influence on you? And then also, like, I'd love to get to know, like, what was it like at Wonder? Did it meet your expectations? What did you work on then? Because that also leads up to the next big move you made afterwards.
Yeah. I didn't deal with that much. I mean, I got a lot of flack from Bloomingdale's, obviously. Yeah, and I actually found that harder than I expected. I think I tend to have like a little bit of people pleasing in me. So having a boss who's like, what if we do this? It was like really hard for me to be like, no, I really do want to leave. But I'm happy I did. Wonder was amazing. Incredible, truly incredible experience for me. I was there for 4.5 years. It was a 7-person company, grew to 65 while I was there. I went from like a random ops person to a GM of the entire supply side of our business, overseeing product and operations. And the confidence in my ability to do great stuff while I was there was just like the most valuable gift I ever could have received in my early mid 20s. So yeah, I have just so much positive juju towards it.
And then what happened next? Because the next big move you made was after 4 years at Wonder, you left to then become.
And is this also where Freud started coming onto the scene a little bit more?
Yeah, totally. So basically, I became a manager at Wonder like a year and a half in. And then I started leading bigger and bigger teams. And I started to realize that when I looked at my calendar for the next day, I just hoped that all I had were one-on-ones. Like all I wanted to do was just have one-on-ones with my direct reports. And like, I wanted them to bring me their life issues, not their work issues. Like I can help you prioritize your to-do list. We can talk strategy, but like, oh, I see that conversation you had with your boyfriend is like kind of affecting you. Let's talk about that. Like, that's like really, that was what got me, like, I just loved it. And even outside of that, like the things at work that were around motivating people or helping someone just like level up in and of themselves, like that was the shit that I loved. And so once I started realizing that, I took it to the extreme and was like, I need to go get my PhD. I don't see any other option. Like I have to become a therapist. And so I took that to my boss, the CEO, and he was like, well, we have this head of people role. We need a head of people. Will you just like, that's closer to people. Like, let's do that. And I said, okay, that sounds like a really good way to take my best guess and move in that direction. Even though I don't think I want HR, like HR doesn't really do it for me, but it's close. And at a startup where I have a lot of cred, I could like kind of play around with it and do what I wanted. So I took that kind of turn, I think in like October of 2019. And so it was like, really satisfying for the first few months. And then I was like, oh, fuck, that's not it either. Like, that's not gonna satiate the craving that I have. It was like better, but not there.
And then what prompted you to leave Wonder then at that point? It sounds like you'd gone to a new role and you thought that might have helped, but after a few months, it didn't satisfy the needs that you're trying to fill.
So it gave me confidence that I was interested in the people side for sure, not admin related, but like actual people. And then, so in December of last year, my sister was diagnosed with leukemia, and she's in remission now, still going through chemo. The first 3 months were really touch and go and like really jarring. Like we were sleeping at the hospital every night and didn't really know what was going on. And as fucking cliche as it sounds, I think I was just like shaken out of my, like, it is not worth it to spend a single additional day doing something that you don't think is right, even if you don't know what else is there. Like I was resting on the idea of, when I know what it is I want to do next, I'll leave. I have no problem leaving. I just want to know what it is. And when Sarah got sick, I was just like, I don't fucking have to know. Who am I kidding? So then I just, like, literally, like, the day I had that realization, I gave in my resignation for a few months later.
And then, how did it lead to where you are right now? So it sounds like you're dealing with your sister, and then now you're in a place where you're facilitating these discussions around sexual health education, things like that. How did that come about? Like, between leaving Wonder to where you are today?
Yeah. So honestly, like, totally almost unrelated paths. So I led my first discussion group, Sexploration, in December of 2019. And that was not at all a professional endeavor. Like, I was just like, I'm in a 6-year relationship. Sex in 6-year monogamous relationships is, like, hard and confusing, and nobody talks about it. And, like, I want to talk about it honestly with people. And I know I'm pretty good at, like, creating an environment where people will do that. So let me just try and see what happens. So I invited a bunch of friends over, got, like, a big spread of, like, scones and baked goods, and then facilitated some discussion and some journaling. And it was fucking great. Like, shit, we need to talk about this. This is amazing. I personally, like, what I needed out of it for myself, I feel like I really got. And so from there, it just started, like, snowballing. So I kind of set them up more legit. I invited more people. I started having people pay for them, and so on.
It's so interesting because, I mean, it's something you would think would be spoken about a lot, and clearly it was something that, there's a real desire from all of you to actually just converse about and explore across a group. So what was that? What was that kind of like? I don't want to get into, like, the details of discussion unless you want to go into them. But what is it like to facilitate a group on this?
It's amazing. It's so amazing. People care so much. We all care so much about how we're perceived.
Yeah.
And specifically on the topic of sex, it's, like, really locked in. And so everyone's guards are so up. Like, it's important that you're seen as attractive and sexy and having a good sex life and good at sex and wanting sex. And so there's so much in the guard around sex for every individual person. And I knew that I was more likely to be super honest than other people, but I also knew that if I was super honest, that other people would be like, oh, here's my in, like, to be honest. Now
You almost,
I
like,
can,
shock them into authenticity.
like, I knew I could get in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess the way I really started is, like, I led by just sharing myself. Like, I wasn't like, okay, so what's everybody have to say about their sex life? I was like, here are some things that I'm experiencing. Anyone else? And then it's like 100% of hands go up. And so then it's a lot easier to start actually hashing out real conversations.
That's amazing. And so, while this is all going on, presumably this is women only at the time. Like, Michael, you weren't involved with all of this. What was your kind of take as, the other half of the monogamous relationship, 6 years in and talking really openly about your sex life in these circles? I'd love to know about that.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I have no secrets. I really don't. Yeah, sex is interesting. I mean, it's what do we learn? Yeah, what are some insights? So, there's male and female, for example, relationship, many different other kinds, but we'll take ours for example. Yeah, I think what's interesting, one interesting thing that we learned in part through Sexploration is that the sort of, like, societal trope is that monogamous relationships are, like, hard of the dude because the dude just wants to bang chicks all day. And while that is true, and it is hard on me because I do want to have sex all day, it's actually, I've learned harder on the woman in the relationship, and I think the main reason why, at least from my perspective, and I think you share this, but I will of course let you corroborate that, because the woman, right? So me, male, want, give seed, and woman, Ali, she wants to feel like, she wants to feel like intense desire from me, and it's hard for me after so many years to really provide like the raw, candid desire that you have earlier in the relationship. And I couldn't, it's so hard for me to like manufacture that sensation for her. Whereas so therefore it's hard to satiate that craving of yours. Whereas to satiate, the craving of ultimately ejaculation, you can just I can just masturbate, and not care as much about having you desire me. So yeah, I think, and then I think you kind of learned similarly talking to the other women that was a fairly common theme, and very interesting having her do it because we've learned a lot together. Was that fair?
I think that's an accurate description of how you see it. I don't think any of that is inaccurate as to what I think, but I would explain it differently, I guess.
Yeah, I'd love to, like, yeah. Can we hear your side of the same kind of thing?
Yeah, so my main learnings, and I speak for myself, there are a lot of similarities across experiences, but like literally everything is normal. So this is not like the universal woman in a monogamous relationship experience at all. It is just my experience. I learned that sex isn't for me. Sex is for my partner. So my role in sex is to be hot and to perform well and to give pleasure and to be attractive. And so I went through life for a very long time, like on autopilot, not being aware that I had internalized those things. And so I think Sexploration for me has been a journey of like opening my eyes to the fact that that's how I've been operating, and then asking myself, oh, what do I want? What would be enjoyable for me? And I think specifically as it relates to a long-term relationship, yeah, I agree that can be really tough, almost like unexpectedly on the woman, because I think there's a false narrative in society that man wants sex all the time, woman just wants a boyfriend. Like that's not real, that's a lie. And it takes a long time to like see that and then understand what it means for you. Like, oh no, I do want sex, and having novel sex in a monogamous relationship is really hard. And so what does that mean? In what ways do we want to explore?
That's fascinating stuff that I feel like people don't really talk about often. So it's great that you're diving so deep into that. I mean, what's the plan next? Like, do you want to so these discussions you host, is that part of like a company? Are you trying to like expand that? Like, how does it actually work? Is it like a business at this point, or just community, nonprofit? Yeah.
So right now it is like a very small business. So I host their 5-session discussion series with a small group of 6 women. Each woman pays, $300 and signs up and joins every other week. We meet for 90 minutes. And that's kind of where it is right now. I think there's a million ways I could take it. Obviously, whether you want to try to turn it into a tech product, whether you want to try to franchise it, whether you want to do 1 million of them. I'm working really hard to not just go the path of what I'm used to in the VC world of just like more growth is better, and just like take it slow.
And I guess there's there's a real intimacy factor of this, which kind of you could very easily lose with super high growth.
Oh my God.
It's personal, it's connection, it's being very open and authentic and vulnerable.
Yeah, and the single best thing about it is the connections between the strangers after just 6 sessions is like unbelievable to witness.
Yeah.
And I don't feel compelled enough to grow it so fast that I lose that. Yeah.
I love that. And so actually, if you're, what do those sessions look like? What would kind of the typical 6 sessions be? If someone's really interested in getting involved and joining one of your sessions, what would it look like?
Yeah, so each session is 90 minutes. The sessions consist of usually some sort of activity and then a discussion focused around a specific topic. So, for example, a topic might be better understanding your desire. And we might do an activity around learning the concept of accelerators and brakes, and then like brainstorming how your accelerators and brakes work. And then having a big discussion around like, oh, well, what are yours? What are ones you've learned? How does your partner react to this one? Like, what do you think your partners are? That type of discussion. And so then each session is just around a different topic.
That's awesome. And so, this obviously has been revolutionary for your relationship together. What's come of this kind of new introspection that you've been applying to your relationship?
I'll let you answer that. What do you think?
I mean, new introspection, specifically related to sex stuff.
I don't think it necessarily needs to be like either the sex stuff or just more generally.
Yeah. For me personally, with sex stuff, the journey I've undergone, thinking about myself, and then hearing, some of your takeaways from like a larger sample size than just myself, is just the realization that like, yes, we're all snowflakes, but we're also all water. And I used to take like my own sort of like sexual impulses so seriously. And it's not that I don't take them seriously and cater to them as needed, but I used to like like whatever, it felt overwhelming. Whereas with like, but like with eating, for example, it's like I do get hungry, but I don't like freak out at the fact that I'm really hungry, it's not like being hungry isn't like an emotional experience in a place where there's a bunch of food like America. So it's very emotional in other places. But, for me in the US, it's not like an emotional thing. I'm hungry. Okay, whatever. I guess it felt more abstract, but it really isn't. It's just my fucking body. So I'm way chiller these days about how I think about sex and approach it.
Yeah, both of us, I would say.
And actually, yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I think that's probably, wouldn't want to generalize, but a lot of young men would probably feel that kind of, rampant, it's pent up, it's now. In what way have you kind of learned to, relax yourself, or is it just come with time?
Just the perspective that it's not the key thing for me. And okay, so to go a little higher level, so you think about sex. Why do I, Michael, want to have sex? I want to make a baby. Okay, I mean that's what it's about. And so I have had sex many times, and none of those events were with the goal of making a baby. So they were all kind of like just faking myself out. And then I think like, okay, let's say I was gonna make a baby. Like, is that really valuable? And I get kind of caught up because like there's 7.5 billion people now. We are slowing down, but the population is continuing to grow. If I throw another kid, another human into that mix, like the odds that kid has any more than an average impact is very low. Like the odds that kid's an outlier, extremely low. And so it's like it kind of in a way discredits my own urge to want to have sex, because I think like the importance to me having a kid to the species is fucking zero. So
I don't buy this though. We have this conversation a lot because ultimately like everything you just said makes sense, but you can't like rationalize your way out of a human experience. You can't be like, oh, I want to have sex, but because my kid isn't going to solve the next global crisis, I actually don't want to have sex anymore. You still want to have sex.
I definitely appreciate the pushback. And it might be totally right, but like taking the food thing as an example, like I'm sure when I was a little tiny baby, and I got hungry, I'm sure I freaked out. I wailed and I wailed and I wailed until my mom gave me food. And using that as an analogy for the sex impulse, I was a 25-year-old little tiny baby. I wailed and I wailed and I wailed and I wailed. But like with the hunger food thing, as I got older, I learned.
Okay, I understand.
I can chill the fuck out.
There's a maturing of perspective, is your point.
Yeah, and that does seep into the animal mind.
Yeah.
So
I accept.
They're both true. Everything it's always the answer. They're both true.
Well, guys, thank you so much. You've been like so open, honest. It's been awesome having you guys on. We have actually got a really controversial question for a couple. As I kind of close, we ask it to everyone, but for a couple, it's even more controversial. And we're going to ask it. You're going to have to reach some sort of middle ground here. What is your favorite rom-com? We need one answer only, not one each.
What do we like together? Let's think what we like together.
Okay. What rom-coms do we like? Oh, I know. What's that? Okay.
Okay, we got some whispering going on, guys.
We like that one, right?
We're going to Marshall?
Some deliberation.
Is there something that's like really us? There's gotta be.
A rom-com that's really us.
I mean, like really, I like Wedding Crashers so much.
I have to put a countdown on this one, guys.
Oh no!
We'll go with Wedding Crashers.
Wedding Crashers.
Yeah.
Okay, classic. Any explanation there? Even just like a couple sentences, but why Wedding Crashers?
Honestly, no good explanation.
No.
Nothing good. Wedding Crashers.
It's funny.
Final answer.
Got it. Okay. And the final question we have for you, which is slightly more serious, and maybe we can get two answers from you guys, is that if you were sitting across from your 18-year-old self, knowing what you know now, what would you say to him or her? I think individual answers probably be great for this one.
Take the red pill. No. I would tell that dude to, really the same lesson. I would say, say fuck it faster and earlier than you're going to.
I would say, what do you think?
Oh, no, I would say start learning about longevity. I take mine back. I take my first one back. I would say start learning about longevity now. 100% done.
And Ali, what was your answer? What would you do?
I would say, what do you think?
What do
you actually think? What do you think?
Okay.
Stepping away from groupthink. I like it. Awesome.
Yeah. Well,
thank you so much. Hey, we got some high fives from us as well. There we are.
Wonderful conversation. I've learned so much. You guys are really at the forefront of so many things.